Obviously, we've seen this right here. We've all seen that when it comes down to it, if the Fever, if they sign one player to a max, and it's Kelsey Mitchell, and like if they sign Kelsey Mitchell to a max, they're kind of at the stage where they're a little bit screwed. They're a little bit screwed, you know, if they sign Kelsey.
Of course, every major decision comes with alternative scenarios, and front offices always explore them, even if they never act on them. One hypothetical path involves considering whether similar production could be recreated through a combination of less expensive players and strategic roster depth. That approach doesn't necessarily replace star power, but it can sometimes approximate overall output if multiple contributors share the load. For instance, a veteran guard like Odyssey Sims on a smaller contract might provide portions of the same skill set at a fraction of the cost. She wouldn't replicate Mitchell's exact scoring punch, but in the right system she could deliver enough playmaking and perimeter threat to keep the offense balanced. Pairing that type of player with a dominant primary creator could still yield effective results, especially if the surrounding roster emphasizes defense and ball movement. There's also evidence from past game stretches that different lineup combinations can succeed. In one notable matchup against the Atlanta Dream, lineup adjustments sparked a dramatic scoring surge that shifted momentum completely. During that stretch, Katie Lou Samuelson slid into a guard role alongside the primary ball handler, and the unit functioned surprisingly well. The spacing improved, passing lanes opened, and the offense flowed with a rhythm that caught opponents off guard. Moments like that don't automatically prove a star is expendable, but they do give executives data points. They show that alternative configurations can work under certain conditions. For decision makers, those glimpses matter because they expand the range of possibilities. The question becomes not just who is the best player, but which combination of players produces the most sustainable success within our financial limits.
She just made an all WNBA first team, and that is a massive thing. That is massive. Like, there have been 2 Fever guards since Tamika Catchings to have made an all W first team, and she's one of them. She's one of them. Like, it is a massive, massive thing. Like, she was one of the best guards in W last year. Some of the things that she did were almost superhuman. Like that.
Another layer that complicates the situation is chemistry, particularly her on-court partnership with Caitlin Clark. Fit matters just as much as talent when constructing a winning lineup, and stylistically the two complement each other in several important ways. Mitchell has the ability to operate effectively without dominating possession, which is crucial when sharing the floor with a primary ball handler who orchestrates the offense. Her off-ball movement, catch-and-shoot capability, and willingness to attack gaps make her a valuable secondary option rather than a redundant one. That kind of pairing is something contenders actively seek. Most championship-caliber teams rely on at least one player who can create offense late in the shot clock when a set breaks down. Mitchell has shown she can fill that role, stepping into isolation situations and producing points when defenses expect her to shoot but still struggle to stop her. Those skills aren't easy to replace, and they often become more valuable in playoff environments where possessions slow down and half-court execution determines outcomes. Still, every strength has a counterpoint. One of the few criticisms occasionally mentioned by analysts is her tendency to lean heavily on isolation scoring even when other options might be available. That approach can sometimes lead to difficult attempts early in possessions, which can stall offensive rhythm if shots don't fall. It's not a fatal flaw, but it is something decision-makers consider when projecting long-term roster fit. The dilemma is clear. She offers elite shot creation and proven production, yet her style requires careful balance within a system built around ball movement and spacing. Teams must ask whether they can optimize both her strengths and the system simultaneously. That evaluation doesn't diminish her ability. It simply reflects the complexity of building a roster where individual excellence and collective efficiency coexist without friction.
Ridiculous. Another thing is that Caitlin Clark likes playing with her. Caitlin Clark is a big fan of playing with Kelsey Mitchell. Why? Because Kelsey Mitchell is a player who is absolutely elite off the ball when she wants to be. She can be a really big on-the-ball threat, and she can be a late second shot clock isolation scorer, which every team kind of needs. Problem is that sometimes she kind of overly relies.
All of this leads to the broader truth about roster construction at the highest level: difficult choices are unavoidable. Teams striving to contend must constantly weigh loyalty against flexibility, present success against future stability, and individual brilliance against collective balance. There's rarely a perfect solution, only options with different risks and rewards. In situations like this, speculation tends to grow louder than reality. Fans debate scenarios, analysts propose trades, and headlines frame possibilities as if they're imminent decisions. Inside a front office, however, the process is usually far more measured. Executives gather information, consult coaches, evaluate chemistry metrics, and project financial outcomes across multiple seasons before making any move. A single rumor rarely reflects the full picture. What makes this particular case fascinating is that it highlights how success can actually create harder decisions. When a team has multiple talented players deserving of major contracts, keeping everyone becomes more challenging, not less. Paradoxically, improvement increases complexity. The better a roster becomes, the more carefully it must be managed to stay that way. Ultimately, discussions about potential trades or contract dilemmas don't automatically signal dissatisfaction with a player. Often they signal respect for how valuable that player is. The higher someone's value rises, the more significant the decisions surrounding them become. In that sense, the very existence of this debate underscores Mitchell's importance rather than diminishing it. The franchise isn't questioning her talent. It's wrestling with how to fit that talent into a long-term blueprint designed to keep the team competitive not just next season, but for many seasons to come.
Choice of like keeping, where it's if you keep Kelsey, you lose both Lexi and Sophie. Or you could do what I actually believe is an almost not a quite a like for like, but let's say you're able to bring in Odyssey Sims. Imagine Odyssey Sims plays on a minimum. I think Odyssey Sims is Kelsey Mitchell light. And she's not as good as Kelsey Mitchell, but like I think if she went played with Caitlin, she could play the Kelsey Mitchell role. And we also saw in the Atlanta Dream game when the Fever won the second half by like 30 points.
That's the complicated reality the Indiana Fever are confronting at this very moment, and it's not exactly the kind of discussion any franchise enjoys having behind closed doors. On the surface, everything looks stable. The roster has star power, momentum is building, and expectations are climbing. But beneath that optimism sits a tough financial and strategic dilemma that front offices across professional sports know all too well. The issue isn't effort, production, or talent. The issue is math. And sometimes math forces decisions that feel uncomfortable even when they make sense on paper. At the center of this situation is Kelsey Mitchell, who is coming off a season strong enough to earn elite recognition and postseason praise from analysts and fans alike. Her recent playoff showing elevated her reputation to another level, with many observers describing her as nearly untouchable because of how she carried herself under pressure. She delivered scoring bursts, late-game shot creation, and relentless competitiveness that made her look like the kind of cornerstone teams usually build around, not move away from. That's what makes the current conversation so surprising. The question floating around league circles isn't whether she's good enough to stay. That's already been answered. The question is whether the franchise can realistically afford to keep her while still constructing a balanced roster capable of contending long-term. In salary cap sports, talent alone doesn't determine roster decisions, allocation does. A team can value a player immensely and still explore trade possibilities simply because financial structure demands flexibility. This is where the tension lies. Fans see performance and loyalty. Executives see spreadsheets, projections, and timelines. Those two perspectives don't always align. From a purely basketball standpoint, Mitchell has proven her worth repeatedly. But from a roster-building standpoint, the organization has to weigh present production against future sustainability. That doesn't mean a move is inevitable. It means the conversation exists. And the mere existence of that conversation tells you just how complex modern team building has become, especially when a franchise is trying to transition from promising to truly competitive.
Kelsey Mitchell is clearly the best of those players. There is a world where Kelsey Mitchell, you can free up Kelsey Mitchell's contract, get it almost like for like, and build for the future. If you don't believe you're going to be the best team in 2026, you have to prep for the future going into 2027, 2028. And Kelsey Mitchell's losing her last core year this year. She's probably losing her last core designation.
The financial dimension becomes even more intricate when you factor in the league's evolving economic structure. Under the new framework being discussed across the WNBA, salary caps are expected to rise significantly, potentially reaching levels that give teams more spending flexibility than ever before. On paper, that sounds like a solution. More cap space should make it easier to keep star players, right? In reality, it just shifts the puzzle rather than solving it. Even with a higher cap, allocating a super maximum salary to one player still limits what can be offered to others. For a team trying to build depth, that matters enormously. Consider the importance of maintaining competitive deals for key contributors like Lexi Hall and Aaliyah Boston. Both represent critical pieces of the franchise's present and future, and ensuring they remain part of the core requires financial planning well in advance. Then there's the forward-looking factor every front office must consider: upcoming contract timelines. When a franchise cornerstone eventually becomes eligible for a major extension, the organization must already have room prepared within its salary structure. Waiting until that moment arrives is too late. Smart teams plan years ahead, mapping out scenarios to avoid being forced into rushed decisions. That's why conversations about roster economics often start long before fans expect them. What looks like premature speculation from the outside is actually strategic forecasting on the inside. Executives aren't predicting failure, they're preventing it. They model best-case and worst-case scenarios, analyze projections, and test different roster combinations to see which ones remain sustainable. In that context, discussing the financial implications of any major contract isn't a sign of doubt. It's a sign of preparation. The goal isn't to dismantle a successful core but to ensure it can remain intact and competitive for years rather than peaking briefly and fading due to financial strain.